Dog gives birth. Then doctors realize they're not puppies. What would you do if one of your dog's puppies was completely different from the rest? Would you be worried? Would you be intrigued? Or would you be over the moon? One woman just didn't know what to make of the situation when her dog gave birth to a bizarre and rare puppy. And she still can't believe that it happened to this day. The dog in question gave birth in July 2017, and Louise Sutherland from Scotland was there to watch the whole thing right in front of her eyes. Louise has numerous dogs under her roof, but there's no doubt about the fact that she has a soft spot for golden retrievers. This particular story involves their beloved 3-year-old retriever by the name of Rio. A year or so earlier, Rio had given birth to her first litter of puppies, and Louise felt as though she knew what to expect from the experience. There were no complications during the pregnancy or birth, and the puppies all seemed uniform and perfect. Because of this, Louise assumed that her second litter would be just as simple. During her first pregnancy, Rio welcomed 5 adorable puppies into the world after a fairly quick 5-hour delivery. Louise and her family decided not to keep the puppies for themselves, but rather sold them on to loving families who would take care of them and give them the attention they deserved. While it was tough to see them go, they knew it was for the best, and they knew that they would thrive in another environment and on their own. It was a process that they'd gotten used to, but things were going to get even more strange. Because they'd gone through the process of welcoming a new litter into their brood and then selling the puppies when they were old enough, Louise believed that Rio's second litter would follow a similar routine. They prepared themselves for the impending arrival, and they also filled their home with supplies so that they could look after the puppies until they were mature enough to be given new forever homes. They had no idea at the time that things would go in a completely different direction, and one of the puppies wouldn't leave their home at all. Rio eventually gave birth in early July 2017 after a relatively normal pregnancy. There were no complications, she was as healthy as could be, and they were just waiting for the day that the second litter arrived. When that day came, Rio welcomed 9 adorable little puppies into the world, and she looked as proud as Punch to have them nuzzle into her stomach. Yet, while Rio was getting accustomed to life as a new mom again, Louise and her daughter noticed something a little off about one of the pups. That's because he was very different from the rest. Although Rio's pregnancy went along without a hitch, unfortunately the same couldn't be said for the birth itself. At the time, Louise and her daughter Claire were on hand to watch the process, and they got to watch the magical moment for themselves. As Louise and Claire watched on from the sidelines, they could see that labor wasn't going to plan. Rio looked uncomfortable, and when they got a closer look, they could see that one of the puppies was stuck. During an interview with The Sun, Louise noted that it was all hands on deck when they noticed that their dog was in pain. They knew that they couldn't just sit idly by, so they decided to put on their gloves and get in on the action. They helped to pull out the first puppy to give Rio some respite, and it seemed as though that was all the help she needed. Once the first puppy had been born, and Rio made sure she was alive and well, the other 8 puppies followed suit without any other intervention. The golden retriever had taken to her puppies immediately. But the more Louise looked at the litter, the more she realized that something was out of the ordinary. One of the pups was a completely different color to the rest. Louise Sutherland hails from Gulspie in the Scottish Highlands, and there's no doubt about the fact that her life changed forever when her beloved family dog fell pregnant. As a keen animal lover, the mother and wife had been surrounded by animals for as long as she can remember. Her home is full of cats and dogs, and she's used to seeing all kinds of weird and wonderful animal behavior. However, she experienced something completely new when her golden Labrador welcomed a new litter of adorable little puppies into the household. The puppies of golden Labrador dogs are almost always a similar color in terms of its coat. Its golden color is easily recognizable, which is why one of the puppies stood out like a sore thumb. Instead of looking the same as its brothers and sisters, this particular puppy was mint green in color. The mother and daughter were amazed by the strange tinge in the pup's fur, but they were also extremely concerned. There was a stark difference between that particular puppy and the rest of the litter, and they couldn't help but wonder if this meant they were in some kind of danger. They wondered whether it was ill, and they wondered whether it needed urgent medical care. To help them decide what to do, Louise and Claire decided to look into the phenomenon on the internet and see if that could point them in the right direction. They had no idea at the time that their green puppy was something special, but they soon discovered that he would go down in history books for being an enigma. The mother and daughter were relieved, but they were also lost for words. Who knew Rio would give birth to such a rare puppy? In fact, Rio's green puppy is one of just a handful of other puppies around the world to be born with such coloring. The number of dogs who come into the world with a green tinge to their fur can be counted on one hand, and it's always exciting when a new one is born. However, you'll be happy to know that this phenomenon is not due to a health condition or a defect. There's instead a very scientific reasoning behind the coloring, and it's one that many are unaware of. This suggests that it has a role in providing the puppies with vital nutrients or food because of the pregnancy process, perhaps in order to help them grow and thrive within the womb. Because of this, it seems necessary for survival. However, dogs are not alone in terms of their biliverdin production. Humans also have this pigment present within their bodies, and we actually have this particular pigment to thank for making our bruises look yellow and green in color. As if that wasn't enough, this bile pigment can also be found in various other animals within the animal kingdom. This is particularly true for many marine fish who have biliverdin present within their blue and green blood. Moths and butterflies also have this pigment in their bodies, and the eggs of frogs can normally be found with traces of biliverdin within them. However, you can rarely see that this pigment is present within all of these animals. So what was so special about Rio's puppy? Why did the biliverdin affect the color of its fur? It seems as though Rio's special pup got lucky with his amniotic sac, and the presence of the biliverdin around its fetus and growing body eventually stained its fur. While it's not uncommon, this has only happened a handful of times in the past. After a while, it'll go back to looking like its brothers and sisters, and nobody would notice that anything had been different. This was the case for Rio's puppy, and the green color eventually disappeared. Despite the fact that Louise and Claire knew that their puppy would not stay green for the rest of its life, they knew that it was something special. It had been an incredible experience for them to witness, and they couldn't believe they were able to see a puppy stained with biliverdin with their very eyes. The mother and daughter wanted to honor the green color that the puppy had been gifted with, and they wanted to keep it in with the natural theme of their surroundings. Known for its greenery, its shrubbery, its mountains, and its forests, the Scottish Highlands were the perfect inspiration for the family. They eventually settled on the name Forest, and they were over the moon with their decision. However, as any puppy owners will tell you, the hardest part was yet to come. Louise knew that they couldn't keep all their puppies, so they had to decide what they were going to do with them. 5 years before Rio welcomed Forest into the world, another dog welcomed a very similar green puppy into her owner's home. This particular story involves a couple by the name of Naomi Grimes and Kyle Murray, who were the owners of a beautiful 2-year-old golden Labrador by the name Buttons. Because this was the first time that the Labrador had fallen pregnant, Naomi and Kyle didn't feel quite as prepared as Louise and her family. Things became even more complicated when Buttons added a green puppy into the mix. They were over the moon when they witnessed the first puppy make its appearance, and they were just as excited when the second reared its head. However, there was something strange about the second puppy, and the couple noticed that it had a green tinge to it. Like Louise and her daughter, the couple began to worry that the second puppy was in some kind of danger. They wondered whether it was breathing properly, whether its circulatory system was working to its full capacity, and whether there was anything seriously wrong with it. Before calling the vets, they also decided to search the symptoms online. It was during this search that they discovered the phenomenon of the bile pigment and realized that their puppy was as healthy as could be, even if it was green. In the end, they decided to call their green Labrador Hulk after their favorite green superhero. They were incredibly sad to see Hulk go, but were happy to see him go to a loving home. Elaine immediately connected with the one girl pup because she was outnumbered by her brothers. But the woman also knew that she was even more special because of her coloring. Yes, Millie welcomed her own green daughter into the world. As Millie marveled at the sight of her pups, she followed her instinct and began to lick all of them clean. Elaine assumed that this act would clean the pup of her amniotic residue and leave her with natural fur underneath. And this was the case, but it wasn't the result she was expecting. She spotted the green tinge to the puppy and she tried to laugh it off. She couldn't imagine why a dog would be green, and she thought that she was seeing something that wasn't there. It's amazing to think that dogs across the world have welcomed green pups into their litter, but this happens on very rare occasions. When instances like this occur, news stations and newspapers seem to go wild because it's such a strange phenomenon. Although you've now been made of such a rare phenomenon, there are many dog owners out there who are not clued up on such condition. They may never have seen such a thing before, and they may not have heard of anything like it. Because of this, it can be a terrifying ordeal for these owners.